Marketing is about values.
Nike didn't call me and sell me this in a catalog. I bought this swoosh because it's ingrained in my soul.
When you have a product that really resonates with customers, the word of mouth grows like wildfire.
Welcome back to another episode of the 10-Minute Marketer. Super happy to have you back. If you're new to the show, welcome. We recently rebranded from the not so egotistical The Marketing Max show to the 10-Minute Marketer because we want to bring you bite-sized, really actionable tips, tricks, insights, and strategies that you could literally listen to in 10, 15 minutes and walk away with something that could actually impact your business. Because now that I have a kid, it's like, damn, who has time to listen to a podcast, let alone record one? So thank you for being here. We'll start with a new version of our 5-second bet. Instead of giving you 5 seconds to hit that like and subscribe button, which you're totally welcome to do, we're going to give you 5 seconds to text this episode or Slack this episode or tweet this episode to a friend or out to your audience before you even listen to it. And if you don't like it, then what you can do immediately after you listen to this episode is you can go back to that friend and say, wait, I just listened to this and it's crap. Never listen to Marketing Max again. Never listen to Logan again. Or if you posted it on Twitter or on LinkedIn, you can comment, wait, never mind. I just listened to this and it's crap. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to go ahead and send this to a friend or your mom, like I do sometimes, to make her feel like I'm actually
get compliments on our episode. That's all I do, man. I send them to my mom too.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, let's count this down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Today, I'm going to be a little selfish because I am going to be hosting a webinar at the end of August. I'm going to be hosting a webinar walking through 3 lead gen strategies on the back of newsletters. If you're new to the show, you know that I run a lead gen agency that uses newsletters to generate a bunch of leads and booked calls for our 50 plus clients at this point. But the only reason I stumbled into this business is because I have generated thousands of qualified leads and hundreds, if not thousands by this point, of qualified sales calls via my own newsletter. And I get questions all the time on Twitter and in response to this podcast and on my website, marketingmax.com, at the form in the bottom, people always ask me like, hey, you know, I have a newsletter, but I'm not really getting a lot of calls from it. I'm not really getting a lot of leads from it. Like, what are the secrets? What are the tricks? And so I'm going to be revealing a lot of those on the webinar. And Logan is the webinar master, especially when it comes to B2B. He runs Demand Shift. I think the website's demandshift.io, but I figured .com. What is it?
.co.
Demandshift.co. Demandshift company. Demandshift.co. He does this for his clients. I'm too cheap to pay him. Just kidding. But I figured for this episode, I would walk Logan through what I'm planning to do, and he can just rip me to shreds, giving you all the Demand Shift playbook for free in the meantime. So how does that sound to you, Logan?
Let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Anything else before I give you a rundown of what I'm trying to do at the end of it?
No, let's break down what you're thinking. And obviously I've learned a ton from you, and I welcome the opportunity to try and give some insights back that'll help you, help the audience think about, hey, if I'm planning a webinar, what are some of the things I should do? What are some of the kind of parts of what I call the dead end playbook that you don't want to repeat? So let's talk about it, man. Frame it up for us. What's the context for the upcoming webinar in August, you said, right?
Yep, in August. So before I even had my lead gen via newsletter agency, this is like 2 years before, I spoke at a conference where I put together a deck walking through 3 ways that marketing agencies can generate leads from a newsletter. And I got a standing ovation at this conference. Like, no joke, no ego. Like, people were like, holy shit, this is amazing. And I think I was like the second speaker out of 5. And a lot of people walked up to me and were like, you should have been the keynote. I'm not going to say the conference, but the keynote that day just happened to be really boring and slow. And I just feel like they needed a cup of coffee. But I had at least 5 people within a few months DM me on Twitter later and say, hey, I implemented this strategy and it actually worked. I implemented one of the 3 strategies that you walked through and it actually worked. So since then, every once in a while, when I'm asked to speak at conferences or when I'm asked to do like a co-branded partnership webinar with other people, I run virtually the same deck over and over and over again.
Mhm.
But I haven't really done it since I launched this newsletter agency, the actual done for you version of it, where
Mhm.
everything I teach in the slides, we do for you.
Mhm.
And I haven't done it because I was mostly on maternity leave. I launched the business like 2 months before maternity leave, and we're busy hiring the right people and setting up the systems and processes. And then my daughter came 6 weeks early, and I haven't been able to do it yet. But now that I'm just slowly coming out the gates back into the real world after maternity leave, maybe this is too much context for those of you that are listening, but yeah, I plan to host that virtually same webinar at the end of August. And the one thing that I'm going to change is the first of the 3 strategies. The first of the 3 strategies I used to talk about before was so easy. It took literally like 20 minutes to do every month, that people felt, hey, this is something I can do. I can try at least before I go and hire Max's team or ask Max for consulting or anything else. I just feel like it was too easy. So I'm going to be replacing that first one. Of course, everything in the webinar, I walk through screenshots of how to set everything up. I walk through pro tips on how you can go do it yourself. But one of my friends in the past told me, you want to make whatever it is that you're teaching in the webinar feel overwhelming, feel like they don't have enough time to do it, so that they're like, oh shit, I'm going to hire you. Now, that's not necessarily my goal, because I genuinely want to help people. If 200 people show up live and, you know, I get 2 or 3 clients out of it, but the other 197 people actually went and go implemented this on themselves, amazing, fantastic, 10 out of 10, like success. Even if I get no clients out of it, I genuinely want to teach this strategy to people because it's so new, because it's super unique, and it just freaking works. But that's kind of the only change I'm going to make. And then in terms of distribution, I mean, 150,000 people read my newsletter every single day. So I'm going to be sending a few dedicated sends. I have a few segments broken out based on how people have answered my sign up flow of what industry they're in. So if I think they could be a good fit for this, I'll do a dedicated send to them, and then I'll promote the webinar a few times just directly in the newsletter in our inventory, or maybe even like a little banner up top or something. But yeah, that's essentially what I'm doing. 3 ways to generate more leads via a simple weekly newsletter. Again, promoting it to my audience. And the goal is to make 2 out of the 3 things maybe seem a little bit overwhelming, not like deceivingly overwhelming, not hiding the stuff. I mean, I have a lot of people, again, go and take exactly what I teach them and go implement it, and they found success on their own. But feel free to ask questions or tell me if I'm going about it all wrong.
No, I think you're headed down the right track, man. I don't think you're going down a complete dead end, going off of what I was saying earlier. But I always think about, how could we get more out of it? How could we go faster? At Demand Shift, when I'm working with clients, I try to teach them the 5 points of what we call our webinar fast track framework. So we think about step 1, what are you doing for promotion? What are you doing to drive registrations? You've got a leg up there with over 100,000 email subscribers. But I think even with that, I think there are some tactics you could employ to get in front of some new audiences there. Second, I think about the sign up flow. And for anybody who's familiar with you and I, they know that, hey, some version of your S2 should be involved here. So I'll touch on how I think you could do that with the webinar. How do you make the quality of the live show good, including not just quality of content, but how do you segment the look and learners, the DIYers, from the people who could and should hire you? And then I think about, how do you do segmented follow-up? And then how do you repurpose and amplify? So number 1, let's talk about promotion. Obviously, dedicated sends, segmenting your list, doing ads in the newsletter, like, definitely should be table stakes. I've also found that to go to a new audience, I mean, I've picked up some things from you on, scraping lists or using the right tools like Apollo or Zoom Info to find the right target audience for those of us in B2B. It's pretty darn easy to take a list there, to load that up into an event marketing platform like even Eventbrite or Luma are 2 that I've seen, to run cold emails to a large cold list without kind of risking your domain credibility.
Wow.
And spam mentions and stuff like that.
Wait, this is a crazy growth hack. I've never heard of this, because I've used Luma in the past when I used to do a lot of webinars.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, they've got good integration with Zoom and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so easy. And I've actually tested sending people straight to an unbounced landing page versus sending people like from Facebook ads or my newsletter straight to a Luma landing page. And Luma actually converts better. I don't know what it is about page load
Wow,
time
weird.
or
Okay.
layout or design, or maybe it's just like they're engineered or their pages are optimized for RSVPs. But you're saying I can literally upload a list of like 1,000 or maybe even like 5,000 people into Luma and then invite them through Luma to my webinar.
Yeah, exactly. And whether you use Luma or Eventbrite, they both have direct integrations with Zoom. So if you're hosting the webinar on Zoom, you don't have to send them to the Zoom registration page, which you have very little control over. They're ugly. They're not optimized for conversion, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Eventbrite or Luma, they work in similar ways where you can list your webinar there. You're not going to get, organic traffic there, that sort of stuff. But I forget what Luma's pricing is, but like for Eventbrite, you can sign up for like a $15 or $20 a month plan that lets you send 2,000 emails a day through their servers, but they look like they come from you. And at least on Eventbrite, it's just like buy a ticket and you just set up that a ticket equals a free webinar registration, right? And as soon as they do that, they get registered in Zoom. So they get the calendar invite and you're able to do this without risking your, spam reports and unsubscribes going up and that sort of stuff and your domain credibility at risk.
Such a hack. This might be the title of the episode. Honestly, like I genuinely didn't know this existed. I've done a lot of webinars before. This is why I came to you. You're the webinar goat. All right. So I'm going to probably, after the first week or two of promotion, export all of the people who clicked on the ad in my newsletter, but didn't actually RSVP on the Luma page. I'm going to take their emails, upload it into Luma, and just invite them.
Yeah, you can do that too.
I'm all about this. This is fantastic.
Yep.
Thank you, Logan. Let's keep going. I love this.
Yes. The other thing you can do on the promotion side, I recently learned this hack, is you can list your webinar as an event on LinkedIn. Now you can do this through your personal profile or through your company page. I haven't necessarily tested both. So if you're listening to this, you test both. Let me know which one you think is performing better. I'm doing this for a few clients in my own webinars right now at Demand Shift. But what's really interesting is once you list it as an event, if you are a speaker or a manager of the event, there's a little share button that lets you hit invite. And then it pulls up all your first degree connections on LinkedIn. And you can send up to 1,000 invites a day on LinkedIn. And it's cool. It shows up in like your notifications feed. Like Max, if you and I weren't connected on LinkedIn and I sent you a connection request, you get the little checkbox or the X, right? Like, do you want to connect with Logan or do you want to see his message? It shows up like that. So I actually like that it doesn't show up as an in-mail because those tend to get ignored. And even to your first degree connections, you're not like bombarding them in their DMs because LinkedIn inboxes are already a little crazy. But it's like super easy for people to hit X or check and you get some more signups there. I'm working with a client right now that's getting 50% of their signups to their webinars through this LinkedIn event invite path on their show.
Wow. Okay, so we got the cold email Luma hack. We got the LinkedIn event. Webinar. Send up to 1,000 connection requests, or I guess like invites a day through LinkedIn.
Yeah,
that's a hack.
Yeah,
I feel like I have distribution on lock though, and we only have 6 minutes, so let's keep it rocking.
Yeah. So I think the second step on sign up flow is doing exactly what you do for your newsletter and for your client's newsletter is leverage the S2 to see if you can get people to book calls even before the webinar happens, right? So that you can segment people for better follow-up on the back end. But I would believe that you're going to book, probably 5 to 10% of people who at least click yes to booking a call if you take them through the typical S2 flow of, hey, register on this Unbounce page. You can have that tie into Zoom so they get the registration, but then reroute them to the type form like you normally do with a newsletter sign up. So I think then on the live show, Zoom does a good job of letting you create polls beforehand, and you can create kind of pre-plan your engagement strategy or maybe even your segmentation strategy. Like, do you want to ask some questions that kind of agitate the pain a little bit right now? If like, rate your performance of your newsletter and impact on revenue from 1 to 10, right? And, jokingly say no sevens, because sevens are fence sitters, right? Strategically place those throughout the webinar as well, because they can drive some more engagement. Even when you have an engaged live audience, getting them to type into the chat, ask questions, those sorts of things, like just get them moving. And I find that that's better than kind of and I've done this, the tried and true of like, drop what city you're joining in from in the chat, which is okay. But I think a poll, which is even easier for them and actually gives you more data on the audience, is actually a better move there.
I love that. I've been to a few webinars where they say, type in the chat your biggest concern about whatever the topic is, or what your biggest holdback is. Like, why haven't you started a newsletter would be like the example adjacent for me. And I think that's really good because it also primes people. Number one, it primes people into the state of mind that, okay, this is something I need to be doing. But also, number two, it then gives you an opportunity, if there's breaks, to go back to those questions or address people's fears, or honestly, people's like sales objections, if you will, if you ask the question the right way. All right. So that's engagement. Any other engagement tips? I think that was your third thing in your, what did you call it? A fast track or something?
Yeah, the webinar fast track framework.
Fast track. You've been my co-host for like a year now, and I didn't even know that's what your secret sauce is. All right, cool. Shows how good of a friend I am. So the third thing is engagement. Any other engagement tips about converting live attendees into booked calls, or is that one of the other two things that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think another thing, and I'm testing this with a webinar with a client literally tomorrow, is almost framing the sales call a little bit differently and having it be more value added. So this client of mine, we're running a webinar on running LinkedIn ads and how to do that effectively. We're running them through a 2-step sign up like the S2 on the front end. But live on the call, we're going to say, hey, the first 5 people who sign up for an audit of their LinkedIn ads account, they're going to get a free audit, which is part discovery, but you go a little bit deeper for these folks. So like, what sort of, exploding offer can you have that's still tied to your sales process, but maybe you put in a little more work, a little more effort, and have that as an offer within the live webinar, something else that I'm testing. So
is that like, I've been on other webinars where they say, hey, okay, just because you showed up today, if you book a call, you're going to get this free guide. You're going to get this template that'll make it easier for you to execute the strategy. Even if you choose not to work with us, just show up to the call and you'll get this template. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Something similar to that. And then I think 4 and 5 on my list, the framework number 4 is segmented follow-up. So how can you take the data of what people filled out on the S2, what people put into the chat and the polls, and how can you take them down a separate path for conversion post webinar? So lots of ways you could do that. I think everybody gets the idea. Number 5 is repurposing and amplifying. So one thing I hate about Zoom is that you don't get a clean video full frame of just you speaking, which is really what you want for like repurposing for clips. So a hack that I've been using is open up Descript or open up Riverside, one of those tools. You can even just open up QuickTime, but the video file is going to be friggin' huge. So I prefer Riverside, and just start the recording on that before you go live on Zoom, and have Zoom still record because you want to use the on-demand version of the webinar. But if you fire up another tool that just records your video and doesn't put you small next to your deck, which isn't going to look good on social for clips, then you can repurpose as on-demand for the full session and promote that on-demand version. But then you have clips that you can feed your social channels with and drive back to the on-demand version. And then the other thing that I'm starting to test with clients, we haven't fully executed this, so I can't tell you what the lift is, but basically repurposing for YouTube, but not just like posting the hour-long webinar. Taking the time, and maybe you can even use a custom GPT to write a YouTube script where you turn it into like a 5 to 7 minute talking head style, where you're presenting it, and then maybe it shows a clip from the webinar, and then it cuts back to you. And like the clips from the webinar basically are kind of like your, insert the content that you're kind of talking through, and make that super succinct, short, have an engaging YouTube thumbnail for it. So that's how I think repurposing, you could get kind of 3 other ways for people to convert without too much effort. It's still coming from the 45-minute, hour-long webinar that you did.
This is super interesting. I'm glad you brought up the repurposing, because my final question for you was going to be, for the clients that you work with, how often are you just recycling the same live webinar content every month versus creating new stuff? Like, I know some guys who just run the same webinar the last week of every month.
Yep.
And they do it the last week of the month, because every call that they book, you can say, oh, and if you sign up by the end of the month, you get X discount, or we'll throw in this or that.
Yeah.
And they literally just run the same playbook, basically the same slides every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But they change the maybe name of it every single time.
Right.
Versus what I've seen other people do is, like, they do it live once, they do it live a second time. By the third time, they've really dialed in the questions and the slides and been able to handle all of the questions that they get typically at the end when it's like, okay, time for Q&A, right? They answer those and they sprinkle those kind of answers into the second round, the third round of the live webinar, and then they record that, put that on YouTube. But that's basically the whole marketing asset. They don't even do it live anymore. They just freaking put it on YouTube. Like, what do you recommend is the best strategy here for me as a selfish person trying to extract as much as I can without going to demandshift.co and signing up for all of your services?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's power in doing it more as an ongoing series. So, like, not necessarily repeating the same content. Because if you did 3 over the course of a quarter, like, hey, if they get your 3 ways to get more leads from your newsletter, what's the next problem that introduced? Because anytime we solve a problem for a customer, whether we're a SaaS brand or an agency, it introduces another problem as they go deeper, take the next step. And so oftentimes it's kind of a yes and, like, how can I repurpose that one as on demand? And can I have meta ads going to it? Can I have mentions in my newsletter going to that on demand version? But then if you're doing new topics, now you can look at, okay, we did 3 different topics over this last quarter. Which one really hit? Okay, now I'm going to put my ad spend behind the on demand version of that one that converted at a higher rate. So I think that there is repeatability, but kind of like you talk about with in your newsletter and why people should do newsletters, like, you're not sending the same content week over week, right? You're adding fresh content because you need to nurture the people who are the 95% who are out of market. So I think if you're just repeating the exact same content with the same title, then it's kind of like only running demo request ads on LinkedIn. Like, you're only going after the 5% and you're missing the opportunity to serve the 95% and build, affinity and trust with them for when they do turn into the 5%. So that would be, even though it's more work, I do think adding additional topics and cycling through those, as opposed to just one that you hammer over and over again, kind of like the Russell Brunson perfect webinar playbook. There's value in that, but start where you can. I think that playbook can work for a while as well, especially if you need leads. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess where I want to test is I'll do this live, a couple versions of it, and then I'll do a maybe watered down version and post it on YouTube, and then put some ad spend behind it to grow the list, or not the list, but to grow the YouTube following. Yeah, that's super interesting. All right, I got to run. I think we're way over our 10 minutes for the 10-minute marketer. Where can people find you if they have questions on their webinar?
Demandshift.co, or look me up. Logan Lyles, Lyles is my last name. Pretty easy to find on LinkedIn.
For those of you that are listening, Logan has been my co-host for almost a year now. We always have a link to Logan's LinkedIn, and I think Demand Shift now, as of like 2 months ago, in the show notes. Thank you guys as always for listening. Hopefully we won the 5-second bet, and you do not need to comment or follow up to that person that you sent this to. If you didn't send it to someone, you didn't take the bet. Now's your opportunity. Please, if you got any value from this at all, someone on your team, a friend, a fellow entrepreneur, a fellow marketer, in a group chat, whatever it is, please go ahead and share this. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Max show. It takes me and my team hours to produce it every single week, but it only takes you 15 seconds to hit that share button and text it to a friend, drop it in a Slack group, or share it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or any of your favorite social platforms. I appreciate you taking the time to check out my content. Have an awesome day.